Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you 4 exciting accidents that I recreated as realistically as possible in the Beamng.drive game. So get ready for the action. Like and comment on which crash you thought was the most spectacular, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. Chapter 1. Crash at Twilight. The first story for today took place near Omaha, Nebraska, on a day that was slowly turning into evening, the sun no longer blazing, but only casting long shadows across the road. The road seemed calm, but the cars kept moving, each in a hurry to go about their business. A black Volkswagen Tiguan stood on the side of the road, waiting for the moment to get on the highway. Behind the wheel was Alex, a man of about 35, who was about to continue on his way after a short stop. He took a quick glance in the mirror, but either he was in a hurry or simply didn't notice the other car approaching. Convinced that the road was clear, he stepped on the gas and drove decisively onto the highway. But at that very moment, a gray Hyundai Solaris was speeding by on the right side at high speed. Before Max, the driver of the Solaris, could even realize what had happened, a Volkswagen suddenly appeared in front of him. He had no chance to slow down or dodge. The front of the Solaris flew straight into the rear of the Volkswagen. The force of the impact sent the Volkswagen flying forward uncontrollably, losing control, and a gray Lexus LX 470 appeared in front of it in the oncoming lane. Jack, the driver of the SUV, did not even have time to apply the brakes. A frontal collision was inevitable. The Lexus was driven to the side of the road, where it stopped without serious damage. Jack, although he felt chest pain from hitting the steering wheel, was able to get out of the car on his own. The Volkswagen was almost destroyed. Its hood was crumpled, the windshield was cracked, and the engine was smoking. Alex was stunned and semi-conscious. His body was pierced by a sharp pain in his head. A concussion was inevitable. There was only one thought in his head: I should have looked in the mirror. The highway was silent for a moment. Debris was scattered on the road. Cars were stopping. Max got out of his Solaris, trembling with adrenaline, but in one piece. He could not believe what had happened. Chapter 1. Deadly Pass. That late afternoon, around 11 o'clock, a terrible tragedy struck on a busy highway near Springfield, Illinois. A young man was driving his Volkswagen Golf, heading home after meeting friends. The night was clear, but the road remained dangerous due to the large flow of oncoming traffic. A truck with a semi-trailer was moving on the highway ahead, and 2 cars, a Hyundai Accent and a Kia Sportage, decided to overtake it at the same time. Both drivers were in a hurry and, without taking into account the traffic intensity, overtook, creating a dangerous situation. The Volkswagen Golf, driven by 24-year-old Alex, was moving in its own lane, but due to the chaotic maneuvering of both cars in the opposite direction, he had no choice. Alex, trying to avoid a collision with the oncoming cars, pulled over to the side of the road. However, the wet asphalt and high speed took their toll. The Golf skidded and lost control, ending up directly in the path of an oncoming truck. The huge vehicle hit the car with such force that it was thrown back into the lane, where it was hit by a Kia Sportage that was completing its overtaking. The double impact caused the Volkswagen Golf to instantly burst into flames. The flames quickly engulfed the car, leaving no chance of escape for Alex. He died on the spot. The driver of the Kia Sportage, a 50-year-old man, was seriously injured and promptly hospitalized. The other drivers, including the driver of the Hyundai, miraculously escaped injury, but the scene they witnessed will forever remain in their memories. Chapter 2. Slick Collision. On a gloomy evening, a highway near Memphis, Tennessee, was the scene of a major accident. The driver of a black sedan had pulled over to the side of the road near a forest to use a porta-potty. When he returned to the car, the rain began to intensify, and the driver wasted no time in getting back on the road, eager to get home as soon as possible, but the wet asphalt made driving much more difficult. The driver of a black sedan decided to overtake a black Toyota Hilux pickup truck, which was moving quietly in the left lane. However, the slippery road and high speed led to a loss of control over the car. The sedan skidded and crashed into the pickup, after which it was thrown to the side. The car collided with a white car, which was already on the roadside because the driver of the white car had stopped earlier, unable to keep the vehicle on the wet road, and was trying to assess the situation. Luckily, the Toyota Hilux pickup truck was barely damaged, and its driver was unharmed. The driver of the white car was equally lucky and did not suffer any injuries. However, the driver of the black sedan, who became the central figure in this drama, was seriously injured and needed immediate assistance. Chapter 1. Reckless Drive. As the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, at around 4 p.m., an incident happened in the small town of Greystone, Missouri, that caught the attention of everyone in the area. A dark gray Audi A6, driven by 27-year-old Alex Green, was speeding down the street. In the passenger seat was his friend, 25-year-old Ben, who seemed to be trying to calm him down. The accident was caused by human negligence. Alex succumbed to a sudden rush of adrenaline while trying to show off the car's capabilities. He decided to make several sharp maneuvers, demonstrating how well his Audi holds the road. However, on one of the bends, Alex lost control of the car, not taking into account the condition of the asphalt after a rainy morning. The car skidded and began to move uncontrollably straight into the yard of a residential building. The car crashed into a fence at high speed, demolishing it without any resistance. Fence fragments flew in all directions. The Audi continued on its way through the yard, demolishing garbage cans and other objects that got in the way. The car stopped only after it rolled over on its side in the center of the yard, leaving a trail of chaos. Despite the severity of the accident, both boys miraculously survived. Frightened but safe, They managed to get out of the car through the driver's door, which miraculously opened after the accident. Local residents quickly arrived at the scene and helped the boys and called the police and ambulance. This incident was a clear example of the consequences of inattention and the fact that roads are not the place to test your speed, especially in the city, where any mistake can be fatal. Chapter 1. A Moment of Negligence. The first story for today took place on a calm afternoon, a highway in the middle of a field that stretched just outside the small village of Riverside, Kansas, seemingly almost deserted. The long asphalt road was surrounded by plains, interrupted only here and there by small bushes and trees. At a small exit from the dirt road that crossed the highway, a silver Volkswagen Golf was parked. Its driver, 29-year-old Mark, was on his way home from a morning trip to the city. He was calm, relaxed, and confident that there was virtually no traffic here in the middle of the field. Mark looked around briefly, but decided that the road was clear and began to drive onto the highway. He didn't know that in the distance, a black Toyota Land Cruiser was speeding along at high speed. Its driver, 45-year-old Adam, was in a hurry to get to the city, maintaining a steady speed of about 150 kilometers per hour. Smooth asphalt and open space allowed him to keep this speed, but visibility was limited due to a small hill. Mark, convinced that no one was around, stepped on the gas and drove onto the highway. Only then did he notice the black Toyota, which was rapidly approaching. Adam, in turn, saw the Volkswagen suddenly appear on the road, but there was almost no time to react. He tried to slow down, but it was impossible at that speed. The Land Cruiser crashed into the left side of the Volkswagen with a terrifying force. The impact was right on the driver's seat, and the silver Golf was thrown to the side of the road, turning it into a pile of crumpled metal. The Toyota stopped a few dozen meters away, leaving tire tracks and debris behind. Eyewitnesses who were nearby immediately called an ambulance. But when the medics arrived, it was too late for Mark. The force of the impact left him no chance. Adam, the driver of the Land Cruiser, was in shock. He was taken to the hospital with injuries that were not life-threatening, but the memory of that day will stay with him forever. This tragedy was a cruel reminder of how carelessness can have fatal consequences. Even where the road seems empty, a moment of negligence can be fatal. Chapter 3. Fatal Descent. Unfortunately, the cars I used to simulate the third accident do not have the ability to add dummies that would convey the human presence in the car. So I apologize for the fact that this is a bit off the mark. Thank you for your understanding. This story is about a family that went on holiday, but their trip turned into a tragedy. A father, mother, and their 2-year-old daughter were traveling through a picturesque canyon in a red Jeep Wrangler, enjoying the warmth of a sunny day. The road meandered between steep cliffs and deep precipices, adding a special charm to the trip, but at the same time requiring great care. At first glance, everything seemed to be going well. The car was driving steadily, and the scenery was stunning. But in an instant, everything changed. which had been confidently moving along the road just a second ago, suddenly swerved to the side and rolled down the canyon slope. It seemed that the car had simply lost control for no apparent reason. It happened so unexpectedly that there was no way to correct the situation. This simulation reminds us all how important it is to be careful when traveling. The unpredictability of the road can be fatal, even if it seems that control over the situation is not lost. Chapter 2: Fiery Collision. As the sky was bathed in the warm hues of a sunset, a terrible tragedy struck on the outskirts of the small town of Riverwood, Texas. A black Toyota Hilux pickup truck was traveling along a main road when its trajectory suddenly changed and it crashed full speed into a petrol pump at a local petrol station. The pickup truck was driven by 29-year-old Tom Branson. Before the accident, he was on his way home from a hard day's work. Tired and irritated, Tom was distracted by a text message on his phone. The few seconds he took his eyes off the road were crucial. At that moment, a tractor suddenly appeared ahead of him and drove onto the road. Tom instinctively jerked the steering wheel to the side to avoid a collision, but due to his high speed, he lost control of the vehicle. The pickup crashed into a petrol station with such force that it instantly caught fire. The fire quickly engulfed the Hilux, and a few seconds later there was a powerful explosion that literally shook the petrol station. The flames rose high into the sky, illuminating the neighborhood. Luckily, there were no other customers at the petrol station at the time, and the staff managed to run to a safe distance when the first signs of fire began to appear. Tom, unfortunately, was unable to get out of the pickup truck and died on the spot. Chapter 3: Drunken Doom. It was a quiet afternoon on a road near the small town of Fairfield, Ohio. The truck driver, 52-year-old Sam Walker, was returning empty after delivering a load. He was driving the speed limit, keeping his eyes on the road ahead. The sun had already begun to hide behind the clouds, and the weather seemed perfect for a safe journey. Suddenly, before he knew what was happening, Sam saw a black Audi A6 rapidly approaching his lane at high speed, driving on the wrong side of the road. The driver of the Audi, as investigators later found out, was highly intoxicated. His reaction and coordination were so impaired that he lost control of the car and drove into the oncoming lane, where Sam's truck was traveling. In just a few seconds, the car flew straight into the front of the truck with incredible force. The impact was so powerful that the sound of the collision could be heard for several kilometers. The truck swayed but remained intact due to its mass, while the Audi in front turned into a pile of mangled metal. Sam got out of the cab, shocked and frightened, but miraculously unharmed, except for a few scratches and a slight bump on his head. He immediately called the emergency services, standing in front of the horrific scene. The Audi was completely destroyed. Unfortunately, the driver and passenger of the Audi died on the spot. Rescuers had to use special equipment to cut their bodies out of the mangled car. Eyewitness accounts and test results confirmed that the driver of the Audi had drunk a significant amount of alcohol before getting behind the wheel. This tragedy is a reminder of the dangers of drinking and driving and how a single moment of recklessness can take a life. Although he survived, Sam is now forever scarred by the memory of the day everything went wrong. Chapter 1. Risky Maneuver. That morning, at around 8 o'clock, the road through the dense forests near the town of Greenville, Texas, was quiet and almost deserted. The sun was just beginning to peek through the treetops, illuminating the road. Among the few vehicles traveling along the road, a large, loaded truck stood out. Behind the wheel was 42-year-old Frank Lawrence, a longtime driver who seemed to be in a bigger hurry than usual. Frank, approaching a group of slower-moving vehicles, decided to overtake them. However, the oncoming lane was occupied by cars that were also traveling in the flow. Instead of waiting for a safe moment, Frank took the risky decision to overtake on the right, on the side of the road. The road that ran between the forests was very narrow, and there was no additional overtaking lane to the right of the asphalt, only a roadside that quickly turned into a slope overgrown with grass and bushes. The truck veered off the road, but Frank hadn't taken into account the weight of the load or the fact that the roadside soil was soft and unstable after the night's dew. The truck's wheels began to sink into the soil, and Frank made a sharp steering movement to try to level the truck. This only made the situation worse. Due to the imbalance and the slope of the roadside, the truck abruptly rolled over on its side and then slid into a ditch. Witnesses, several drivers driving behind, immediately stopped to help. Fortunately, Frank survived. He was pulled out of the cab, which was badly damaged but miraculously kept the driver alive. He suffered only minor scratches and bruises, although he was in a state of severe shock. Chapter 2. Wet Recklessness. As rain pounded on car windows and highway lights blurred in water droplets, a highway near Clarksville, Tennessee, became the scene of a chaotic series of accidents. The Kia Sportage seemed to be driving out of control, endangering everyone around it. The Kia was driven by 15-year-old Jake Miller. The teenager, together with his friends, decided to steal his parents' car the night before after drinking a few bottles of beer. The euphoria of risk and the stupidity of his young age pushed Jake to take a rash step. He started the car and set off on a journey to the nearest town, not even realizing how the rain and his condition would make the road dangerous. The Kia was racing down the road when Jake lost control due to the slippery asphalt and his drunken state and crashed into the back of a white Toyota in front of him. However, the chaos was not over. The impact threw the Kia into the next lane, where it crashed into the side of a gray Ford Explorer that was traveling in parallel. The force of the impact caused the Ford to spin on the wet asphalt, but fortunately, its driver managed to avoid rolling over. Fortunately, all the drivers, including Jake, suffered only minor injuries and shock. However, the consequences of the accidents were serious. Several cars were heavily damaged and traffic on the highway was brought to a standstill for several hours. The police who arrived at the scene quickly established that the culprit was a teenager without a driver's license and with obvious signs of alcohol intoxication. Jake sat silently on the side of the road, looking at the consequences of his recklessness, knowing that this trip would cost him and his family a lot. Chapter 1. Tragic Theft. That evening, at around 2:30 p.m., a tragic accident occurred on a busy highway near Dayton, Ohio. The sun was still shining on the road, and traffic was heavy. Suddenly, a silver Toyota Corolla drove onto the motorway at high speed from a nearby street. The car was driven by a 12-year-old child who, taking advantage of the moment when his parents were talking in the next room, stole the car keys and decided to take a dangerous trip. Excited by the new feeling of freedom, the boy raced down the road, having no driving experience and no understanding of the traffic rules. He was rapidly gaining speed and decided to overtake the car in front of him. Having misjudged the distance and speed, the Toyota Corolla crashed into a white Honda Civic that was moving in its own lane. The impact was so severe that the Corolla lost control, went off the road, and after several rollovers, stopped only on the roadside. The 12-year-old driver died on the spot from the force of the impact and his injuries, with no chance of survival. The driver of the Honda, a 42-year-old man, suffered minor injuries but was taken to hospital for examination. This tragedy was a shocking reminder of the importance of controlling access to vehicles and the responsibility of adults in such situations. Chapter 2. The Lost Legacy. The second story for today took place on a clear morning, when the sun was just beginning to illuminate the neighborhood. The road near the small town of Woodland, Texas was calm. Fresh air and the delicate scent of flowering trees created the illusion of a perfect start to the day. An old white Lincoln Town car, driven by 34-year-old Tom Green, was slowly driving on the road to town. Next to him in the front seat was his sister Kate, who loved to recall how their grandfather had always taken good care of the car. The Lincoln, though it was getting on in years, was a family favorite. Tom inherited it after their grandfather's death, and it became a kind of symbol of family memory. Tom loved this car and proudly told stories about how his grandfather traveled all over the country in it. As Tom approached a railroad crossing, he pulled over to inspect the road. The crossing was old and in need of repair. The rails protruded slightly above the road level, and the concrete between them was damaged. But Tom decided to keep driving. As soon as the Lincoln started to cross the rails, the rear wheels suddenly got stuck. Tom felt as if the car was sinking, and pressing the gas pedal only made the rear wheels slide without making any progress. He and Kate looked at each other in panic as they heard the sound of a train siren in the distance. When they looked back, it was clear that a freight train was rapidly approaching. Tom, realizing that time was running out, immediately opened the door and shouted to his sister, "Come out now!" Kate, despite her fear, gathered all her strength and ran out first, followed by Tom. They managed to run only a few meters away when the train crashed into the Lincoln. Everything happened in seconds. The Lincoln was crushed beyond recognition. Tom and Kate stood by, shocked and powerless. For Tom, it was not just the loss of a car. It was the loss of a part of their grandfather's memory, of all the stories that car had held. Kate tried to calm him down, reminding him that the most important thing was that they were both alive. Well, folks, that was 4 intense crashes in Beamng.drive. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button, share your favorite scene in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.